Alright, let's get this out of the way early. Here's my final review of Modern Warfare 3's campaign mode.
That was terrible! Horrendous! I'm offended! I'm appalled!
Alright, now that I've got that cleared, I want to see the silver lining in all of this here. I've always been a glass half full kind of guy, and I was playing through the campaign and I realized some things. These dudes use some pretty cool gear. You've got special drones and weapons and ammunitions and computer screen beeps. I don't know where Price and his crew get their cash, but man, they've got some high quality tech. It's also strange to me that the enemy keeps these random firearms all over the map that you're playing, but I get it, gameplay. However, a lot of the times when I see this stuff, I wonder to myself, is that a real thing? They've got some crazy things going on here, but could I actually get my hands on some of these things? Well, gamers, you're about to find out. During the story, I took some notes on all the cool and unique gear that I could find, and I put my head down and I did a little bit of research. I'm going to go through this gear here. You'll see some real stuff, and a lot of it you can make yourself. Hit that subscribe button down below to help push me over 200K by the end of the year, and now, let's get down to business. I'm hoping there will be minimal spoilers here, but let's start off with something that's been kind of in Hollywood for years now, the grappling gun. I remember back when I was a kid, I'd see a lot of them in cartoons, and now we cross paths yet again. So my question is the grappling gun real? Yes, actually, though the market seems pretty slim for the pickings. I can't seem to get a pricing on these things because it looks like they're only sold to law enforcement or military contracts or something like that, but like I mentioned briefly, you can actually make one yourself, and it's perfectly legal. Our next piece of equipment here is actually along the same line, pun intended. After you shoot the grappling hook, you're able to rappel quickly using some type of auto repeller, also called an ascender. This saves your wrists, legs, and, well, your entire body, I guess, from the pain of attempting to actually pull yourself up a rope using your physical strength. That is some tough stuff if you've ever tried it. Instead, you can grab one of these, or, again, you can build it yourself. Now let's talk about drones a little bit, because there are several in the campaign that are very interesting. Drones, as you know, are real, and unless you've got one of those $10,000 optics on them, you're likely not going to be able to put those little red diamonds around your enemies or, see through walls. But nonetheless, drones are real. The bomb drone is real in a couple different ways. The easiest method is that you just attach explosives to the drone, you make it go all the way where you want it to go, and then boom, you're down a drone. That's how the game uses bomb drones. However, the modern and realistic way to use them now is to have a detachable system so that certain munitions can be dropped from the sky, and then they can return to base, resupply, charge up, and go do the same thing. Moving on something a little less techy, a little less useful, but also very interesting. In a cutscene in the first mission, you'll see that the operator that you play as, also known as Ivan, he does this strange thing with a rifle where he doesn't have a sling, but yet he's able to place it on his belt. So that stood out to me, and I thought, how did that happen? Well, of course, with the Strike Industries Advanced Weapon Retention System, so that you can have an incredibly impractical system. I remember seeing this years ago on a Facebook ad. You can basically just clip it wherever you want. You just have to have a giant bolt off the side of your weapon, and essentially you can use it as a holster. Now, there are some other uses for a sling that would make them a little bit more practical than this, but this guy Ivan ends up getting doinked shortly after anyway, so who really cares what he does? Okay, how about something a little bit cooler? This was actually in the older games too, but I wanted to mention it here. As you're doing one of the open missions, you can pick up a weapon with this special thermal optic. What this optic does is outline the thermal signatures so you can see more clearly what the object is that you're shooting at. Surprisingly enough, this is a real thing, and if you've got 10 grand lying around, you can go grab one. But it's not going to be that effective if your enemy is wearing thermal camouflage. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. To go along with optics, here's another one, a rangefinder on an optic. Now, this has been around since all the way back in Battlefield 3, I believe, but what's really cool is, well, it's real. How a rangefinder usually works is that it uses a laser system to basically ping something in the distance, and then that ping returns and it tells it how far that object is away, which is what this optic utilizes. Not only is it a good optic because it's got the visual ability to hit your enemies, but it's also nice to know the distance that your enemy is to you. Now, I'm not sure how effective this is going to be in the game with something like an SMG or an assault rifle, but who cares? It's cool. Alright, this is something a little bit simpler and maybe more known, but since the UK aren't even allowed to buy knives, I think it's worth explaining here. In a mission early on, you take on the role of Farah, and you start out without a weapon and carrying this knife. It's got a very unique shape to it with a purpose. In the game, it's called a gutter knife, which is actually appropriate. This knife is usually used for hunting. You see this little hook at the end here? After you've downed your deer or, whatever animal you're hunting, you can take this knife and use this back part to rip it across the stomach to remove the innards. This is a much easier and ergonomic method than attempting to use a regular knife blade and cutting across the stomach and risk hitting the bowels inside, which could ruin some of the meat. Low-tech gear, but big brain design. Onward we go. Do you like explosives? Me too. Well, let's talk about the ammunition here. Now, like some other things, this has been in other games, but it's worth mentioning here. Occasionally, in the missions, you can pick up some incendiary rounds or explosive rounds. You shoot, they go boom. Well, as a civilian here in the US, I can actually purchase these bad boys, though they are expensive. And the explosive and incendiary round basically works the same way. One has just a little bit more oomph. But upon impact, what happens is they detonate a small charge at the tip and then ignite. Sometimes this is a boom, sometimes this is a fire, but all the time, this can be dangerous. All right, let's move on to something that's kind of a stretch here, but we're going to go through it anyway. This is the Snapshot Pulse, which has the same effect as a snapshot grenade. Now, you might think there is no way something like this exists, and I would tell you, you're wrong. I mean, the snapshot grenade, the snapshot mechanic there, nothing is going to make your eyes show where orange spots are, where other bad guys are. Nothing like that, but I saw this recently. The concept exists. Did you know Wi-Fi routers can be used as essentially a sonar system for rooms and buildings? That's not a joke here. You can get a layout of an entire room and even on the other side of a wall just by using a Wi-Fi router. That is less than comforting because that likely means your phone can do the same thing. The future should be fun. Moving on to something that you can build at your home in the United States and is completely legal. In one of the missions, someone is able to bring a 3D printed firearm onto the plane. Now, as of making this video, you can actually buy a 3D printer, print the gun parts, and put them together. Now, for most of these builds, you're going to have to buy the metal internals or the slides. There are very, very few 100% printed weapons. And even if you do print out something like this, the chances that you're going to get past airport security is pretty slim. A gun outline is a gun outline, but still an interesting fact. All right, we're going to move on to the last one, but certainly not least. I mentioned this earlier. In one of the snowy missions, you'll be using a thermal sight, and some of the bad guys won't show up because they're wearing thermal camouflage. This again is a real thing, and you can purchase this to be completely undetectable under thermal optics. You grab some shrubberies and put them on you as well, and you're going to be basically invisible. Now that wraps this stuff up. I obviously couldn't hit all the cool stuff, like, the cell phone scanner that for some reason shows a Nokia on the screen, or the cool rangefinders. But that's just some that stood out to me as I was playing the campaign. And while the campaign was not good, and I did not enjoy it, I enjoyed seeing this stuff. I always enjoy seeing this stuff in the real world. It's really kind of cool to see how they implement those real world things into video games, but it's not really relevant. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of video, let me know down below. Give it a like if you liked it, a dislike if you didn't, subscribe for more, and until the next one, be bold, be courageous, stay gray.